Galactic Academy was a pinnacle of military training, a place where the best and brightest from hundreds of species were forged into warriors. The recruits came from planets with advanced civilizations, stable ecosystems, and long histories of interstellar warfare. All except for one. Elias Carter, a 19-year-old from Earth, stood alone among them. His presence was an anomaly, a decision met with skepticism and outright hostility. Earth was classified as a Class 5 death world, a place of violent weather, apex predators, and relentless survival pressure. The mere fact that a human had been accepted into the academy was considered either a joke or a mistake. Whispers followed him through the halls. Some cadets gawked in curiosity. Others sneered. None hid their disdain. The Drask, towering reptilian warriors, openly mocked him. "The ape thinks it belongs here," one growled, its fang mouth twisting into something close to a grin. Elias ignored them. He had grown up knowing that humans weren't like the others. They weren't born into a galaxy of comfort. They didn't evolve on a planet that made survival easy. Every step of human history had been a battle against extinction. If the others saw weakness in him, they weren't looking hard enough. His first day in the Academy's training yard confirmed what he already knew. The Drask dominated the sparring sessions, their sheer size and strength making them untouchable in close combat. The Vialari, an insectoid species with razor-sharp reflexes, moved like liquid, reacting faster than any human I could track. Elias stood at the edge of the field, watching, calculating. "Are you afraid, Deathworlder?" Varzek, the Drask squad leader, loomed over him, muscles coiled with amusement. "Or do you know you won't last?" Elias met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm just waiting for something impressive." Laughter rippled through the crowd. A challenge, a dangerous one. The instructor, a rigid, by-the-book officer from a species Elias hadn't bothered to identify, gave him a single nod. Stepped forward. "Human, let's see if your kind is anything but myth." Elias moved onto the training mat. His opponent was a Drask, easily twice his weight, its clawed hands flexing in anticipation. The fight lasted exactly 6 seconds. The Drask lunged. Elias sidestepped. A shift of balance, a twist of momentum. Suddenly, the alien's own weight worked against him. Elias barely moved, letting gravity do the work. The Drask slammed into the ground with a stunned growl. The crowd went silent. The Drask rolled to its feet, fury replacing embarrassment. It came again, swinging in a predictable arc. Elias ducked under it, stepping close inside the alien's guard. A well-placed elbow struck the Drask's throat, followed by a sweep of the legs. The warrior collapsed a second time, this time gasping for air. Varzek's amusement disappeared. The instructor called it. "Enough." Elias stepped back, hands loose at his sides. He could feel their eyes on him now. Not mocking, but something else. Something closer to wariness. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The first lesson was always the hardest. By the end of the first week, the pattern was clear. Elias was underestimated at every turn, and each time, he proved them wrong. He wasn't the fastest, the strongest, or the most durable, but he learned faster than any of them. While the others relied on instinct or genetic advantages, Elias adapted. In endurance drills, the insectoid Vialari excelled, their biology designed for tireless movement. The Drask, bred for battle, could push through pain long after other species collapsed. Elias, however, knew that endurance wasn't just about strength. It was about pacing. The Drask started strong, but burned out quickly. The Vialari ran without rest, but lacked the ability to recover efficiently. Elias adjusted, slowed his breathing, controlled his movements. When the others dropped, gasping, he kept going, not because he was physically superior, but because he understood how to suffer efficiently. The instructors watched. Some were skeptical, others intrigued. But the cadets hated it. Varzek, more than anyone. The Drask had built their entire society on the idea that strength ruled all. Elias was ruining that. He was smaller, weaker, but he refused to break. Worse, he won without brute force. The first real confrontation came in the mess hall. Elias had just sat down when a shadow loomed over him. "Varzek, The Drask's deep, guttural voice was laced with restrained rage. "You think yourself above us, Deathworlder." Elias didn't look up. "I think you're trying too hard." The table shook as Varzek's massive hand slammed onto it. "You fight like a coward. You win by tricks." Elias finally met his gaze. "And yet I win. A challenge. This time, not in the controlled environment of the training yard. This was a direct threat. The Drask weren't just testing him anymore. They wanted to break him." A hush fell over the room. Cadets from different species leaned in, waiting. Elias could have backed down. He could have let it go, but he knew how these things worked. In every species, dominance had rules. Elias stood. He wasn't tall by human standards, and compared to Varzek, he was insignificant, but his eyes held no fear. "Let's settle it," he said simply. The challenge was set. Not a fight, but something more controlled. The Academy had strict rules about cadet-on-cadet violence, but they also understood that warriors needed an outlet. The instructors proposed a test, not just for Elias and Varzek, but for all of them, a survival simulation. 48 hours, limited resources, an environment designed to kill, a Deathworlder against the best warriors the galaxy had to offer. Elias just smiled. They had no idea what they had just walked into. The transport ship rumbled as it descended toward the simulated battlefield, a controlled but deadly environment designed to push cadets to their limits. A hostile jungle spread beneath them, filled with unpredictable weather, treacherous terrain, and genetically engineered predators meant to simulate real combat conditions. The mission was simple: survive for 48 hours and retrieve a beacon placed deep within enemy territory. Teams were assigned based on species, but Elias? He was alone. Varzek and his Drask squad exchanged confident glances. The VLRE twitched in anticipation. Elias sat quietly listening, calculating. As soon as the ship's doors opened, the simulation began. Cadets rushed into jungle, already forming loose alliances. Elias, however, didn't move with them. He crouched, eyes scanning the tree line, noting movement patterns. Within 10 minutes, the first cadet fell. A VLRE screeched as something dragged it into the undergrowth. The sound cut off as quickly as it started. The others flinched. Elias didn't. The jungle was alive, and it was hunting them. Most of the cadets stuck to open paths, trusting in their superior technology and strength. A mistake. The jungle didn't care how strong you were. It only cared about whether or not you belonged. Elias moved differently. Quiet, efficient, invisible. The first night was brutal. Creatures with infrared vision stalked the cadets. The Drask fought them head-on, relying on sheer power. The VLRE ran, but speed meant nothing when you couldn't see what was chasing you. Elias didn't either. He climbed. The others had forgotten to look up. Perched high in the canopy, he watched as the jungle culled the weak. Not in the way the Drask understood strength. Not by brute force, but by who could adapt the fastest. By morning, half the cadets were gone. Some were injured, some unconscious. A few were removed from the simulation entirely. Varzek, to his credit, was still in the fight. His Drask warriors had taken losses, but they were still moving, still fighting. But they were tired, hungry. Injuries were slowing them down. Elias? Elias was fine. He had fire, food, water. The jungle hadn't taken him because he had learned how to take from it. But survival wasn't enough. He had a mission, the beacon. By the second night, desperation had set in. The cadets weren't just competing anymore. They were hunting each other. Varzek's squad moved with purpose, eliminating weaker cadets for their supplies. The VLRE ambushed others, striking fast and vanishing. Elias? He let them fight. He let them thin themselves out. The final stretch was the most dangerous. The beacon was located in an open clearing, a death trap. The moment anyone tried to retrieve it, they would be exposed. Elias watched from the tree line. Varzek was there, his squad battered but alive. A few VLRE remained, circling like scavengers. No one wanted to be the first to make a move, so Elias made them. He picked up a rock and threw it hard into the jungle. The sound of snapping branches imitated a predator's approach. The VLRE panicked first, darting away from the perceived threat. Varzek's warriors turned their attention to the movement, muscles tense for an attack. That's when Elias moved. Fast, precise, silent. By the time Varzek realized what was happening, Elias was already holding the beacon. The Drask leader's eyes widened in rage. You. Elias tapped the beacon's activation button. The simulation ended. The jungle vanished. The cadets found themselves standing in the Academy's training grounds once more. Silence. Then the announcement. Simulation complete. Human Cadet Elias Carter, mission successful. Varzek's fist clenched. He had survived. He had fought harder than anyone. And yet, he had lost. Because Elias hadn't fought at all. He had outthought them. The instructors watched him now, whispering among themselves. He could feel the shift. The others had dismissed him as weak before. Now they saw the truth. Humans weren't just survivors. They were predators who knew how to let others destroy themselves. The debriefing was tense. No one spoke, but the silence was heavier than any words could be. Elias stood with his arms crossed, watching the instructors exchange glances. He could see it. The quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted. The cadets weren't used to this. Strength had always been measured in raw power. In the size of your fists, the weight of your armor, the genetic advantages that made you a warrior before you even stepped onto a battlefield. Elias had shattered that illusion. The mission hadn't been about who could fight the hardest. It had been about who could win. And Elias had won without ever engaging in direct combat. Varzek seethed. The Drask leader wasn't just angry. He was humiliated. Losing to another Drask? That was honorable. Losing to a Vielari? That was frustrating. Losing to a human? Unacceptable. The instructor finally spoke, his voice cold and neutral. Cadet Carter, explain your strategy. Elias didn't blink. It wasn't a combat exercise. It was a survival and retrieval mission. The best way to survive was to stay unseen. The best way to retrieve the beacon was to let everyone else eliminate themselves first. A flicker of approval crossed the instructor's face before he masked it. You mean to say you relied on cowardice? Elias shrugged. I relied on human instincts. A murmur rippled through the room. Human instincts. The phrase held weight, though many of them didn't fully understand why. Varzek growled. A real warrior fights with honor. Human. Elias met his gaze without hesitation. Honor doesn't mean much if you're dead. The room tensed. The Drask weren't just physically powerful. They had pride forged into their bones. And Elias had done more than defeat Varzek. He had made him doubt. That was dangerous. Before anyone could speak, a deep, authoritative voice cut through the tension. Enough. Commander Vorsk, the head of the Galactic Academy, a veteran of 100 wars. His presence alone demanded respect. And the moment he stepped into the room, everyone stood at attention. His 4 yellow eyes locked onto Elias. You were underestimated. Elias nodded. Yes, sir. Vorsk's gaze shifted to the other cadets. And you let yourselves be outplayed. His voice was sharp, cutting through any excuses before they could form. Strength without tactical intelligence is weakness. Varzek flinched. The Vielari twitched in discomfort. Elias remained still. Vorsk studied him for a long moment before speaking again. You were given an impossible scenario, Cadet Carter, and yet you succeeded. A pause. Then, his next words sent a shockwave through the room. You will lead the next mission. Elias felt the air shift. They hated this. The idea of following a human, of taking orders from a Deathworlder who had proven them wrong. Varzek's claws flexed. The Vielari whispered among themselves. Even the instructors hesitated, as if waiting for Vorsk to change his mind. But he didn't. This is a combat simulation, Vorsk continued. No survival tricks. No stealth. A direct engagement against an elite AI force. Let's see if you can do more than run and hide. Cadet Carter. A test. A challenge. A trap. Elias knew exactly what this was. They wanted to see if a human could command. And more than that, they wanted to see if he would fail. Elias stood at the front of the briefing room, his expression unreadable. The cadets faced him, arms crossed, mandibles clicking. tails twitching in irritation. They didn't want this. They didn't want him leading them. He didn't care. The mission is simple, he began. Enemy AI forces have fortified a key position. We take it. Varzek scoffed. You think you can lead warriors into battle? Elias met his gaze, unwavering. I don't need to lead warriors. I need to lead survivors. The room fell silent. The AI is programmed for one thing, attrition warfare. Elias continued. It will outlast us, outgun us. If we fight them on their terms, we lose. Varzek bared his fangs. Then we fight harder. No, Elias said. We fight smarter. The simulation began. The battlefield was a ruined city, artificial sunlight casting long shadows through the skeletal remains of buildings. The AI had dug in, mechanical sentries watching every approach, automated turrets scanning for movement. The cadets moved instinctively toward the direct path. The streets, the main roads. Elias stopped them. They're expecting that, he said, which means that's where they've placed the heaviest firepower. Varzek growled. Then where do we go? Elias pointed upward. We take the rooftops. Scaling the crumbling buildings took time, but once they were above the AI's field of vision, the advantage shifted. The AI didn't adapt. It predicted. And it predicted warriors taking the shortest, most direct path. From above, they picked off sentries, disabling the defenses without triggering an all-out engagement. The enemy recalibrated. The AI adjusted, but Elias adjusted faster. He sent the VLR ahead, their agility allowing them to bait enemy fire, forcing the AI to commit resources. The Drask followed, hitting hard and fast before retreating. Hit and run, ambush, psychological warfare. The AI expected soldiers. What it got was predators. By the final phase of the mission, the AI had been reduced to a reactionary force, struggling to keep up. The cadets overran the final stronghold. Mission success. Silence followed as the simulation ended. The battlefield disappeared, replaced once more by the Academy's cold, sterile walls. The cadets stared at Elias, not in anger, not in resentment, in realization. They had followed him, not because they wanted to, but because he had forced them to see the truth. Humans weren't the strongest, they weren't the fastest, but they learned, they adapted, they won. Varzek exhaled, a slow, grudging nod of respect. You're still an arrogant Deathworlder, he muttered. Elias smirked. And you're still predictable. For the first time, the Drask laughed. Commander Vorsk watched from the shadows. The experiment had been a success. The galaxy had always known one rule: never provoke a Deathworlder. Now they had another: never let one lead a war.